All right, hey everyone, welcome to Softcast. This is your host, Sergeant Major Matt Parrish, joined with the U.S. SOCOM Command Senior Enlisted Leader, Command Chief Greg Smith. Chief, we've got a pretty cool episode today. We've been looking to have another Navy SEAL on. It's been a few episodes since we've had some Naval Special Warfare folks. And what I'm also really excited about is the opportunity as the SOCPAC or Indo-PACOM Pacific Theater, Command, our Special Operations Theater, Special Operations Command there, to be able to discuss pretty much half of the world, right? With the Indo-PACOM, AOR, area of responsibility. And so as we get a chance to welcome CMC Dave Isom, the current SOCPAC CSL, Command Senior Enlisted Leader out there at SOCPAC. Dave, first of all, welcome. Thanks off the top for, if you're watching this video on YouTube, you see it's a little dark over there. It's because, unfortunately, we shook Dave out of his rack at about 3 a.m. this morning because he's out in Hawaii. So, Dave, hey, welcome to Softcast. Thanks for coming.
Hey, thanks, Matt. It's an honor to be here and a privilege. And, I would have gotten up even earlier if needed. So just appreciate the opportunity to hang out with good teammates and heroes like you gentlemen.
I think what happens in this advancing years like us is we slowly get up earlier and earlier. Before you know it, it's still last night.
Well, I was thinking as I was doing that intro right there, I think the last person that I said, hey, I appreciate that was Jocko in season 1 because we had him at like some crazy early time as well. So, I guess it's just a Navy SEAL tradition now. But quick rundown, Dave Isom, and then we'll turn it over to you to sort of give us your opening of kind of how you came into the Navy and coming into the SEAL teams and things like that. But enlisted in the Navy in 1987, became a SEAL, went through BUDS, and continued up in multiple command positions within the SEAL teams and within Naval Special Warfare, through Special Reconnaissance Team 2, through SEAL Team 10, through Naval Special Warfare Development Group, and all the way up into now SOCNORTH, and then now culminating into SOCPAC. So, Dave, the first question we've got to ask, because we've got a SEAL back on the show, what's the driving factor on, first I want to join the Navy, and then now I want to go try to get this Trident, I want to go to BUDS. Talk us through your sort of origin story as you came into the Navy.
Sure. Like many energetic young men without a lot of focus or direction, I didn't know what I wanted to do. Yeah. Probably a common theme there. Yeah. But I spent a couple of years at UNC Wilmington trying to find my way, mostly doing a lot of surfing and not much studying, and quickly realized I had a real love of the water. And so there was a natural connection with the Navy as I continued to narrow down, my options for a future career. I had a dad that was a Korean War veteran in the Army. And so, of course, I had seen his life as important, and having lived an important life. He was also a civil engineer, district engineer for the Department of Transportation there in North Carolina as I was growing up. And I saw his example of personal responsibility, where he would get up at 1, 2, 3 in the morning if there was an ice storm or a snowstorm or something that would impact the counties that were underneath his supervision. He'd be out there on the roads, personally skin in the game, touching things, making sure it was all happening to ensure the safety of folks on the road. So there was this sort of theme of selfless service that didn't really register with me at the time. I didn't think about it the way I do now. But looking back, certainly my dad was a tremendous influence. Yeah. And so searching for a direction, the Navy looked like an interesting option. I love the water, and so joined the Navy and was quickly introduced to the SEALs through the usual promotional videos, and I thought, wow, that is that's something I'm interested in right there. So quickly tracked down the nearest dive motivator recruiter and started pursuing that. And as quickly as I could, headed off to BUDS to pursue a career as a SEAL, and it's been nothing but an incredible ride, surrounded by heroes and amazing teammates this whole time.
What'd you think of that first night at BUDS? like at what point in the very early days did you go, I don't know if I made the right decision?
Yeah, I think it was pretty much day one.
Yeah, about 20 minutes after it started.
You show up and you're surrounded by just amazing specimens and human beings, triathletes, bodybuilders, ex-NFL football players, incredible athletes. And you start sizing folks up and you're wondering, wow, do I even fit in here? What have I signed up for? But again, going back to my dad, he had a very don't quit attitude about everything in his life. He grew up as sort of the son of a poor farmer over in Tennessee and made a great life for our family. And so his don't quit attitude, of course, was core to me and my siblings. So showing up there at Buds, I knew as soon as I showed up, I was like, hey, there's no quit. We're going to see this thing through to the finish line.
Dave. So what do you tell, like me, you're not the, if you're around NFL dudes and bodybuilders, you're not the biggest guy, right? So immediately you go through this period of self-doubt, like you said, am I even going to fit in? Oh my gosh, look at these. So how does that intestinal fortitude, if you will, carry you through? And weren't you surprised when you started seeing some of those same guys ring the bell and tap out?
Yeah, that's a great question, and that's where my head was going as you were talking was, the thing that gave me and grew my own internal confidence and ability to finish was seeing some of those folks that I thought were such specimens. As they would ring the bell, and I thought, wow, I can't believe they're quitting right now.
Right.
But yeah, it kind of inspired me to keep going.
Yeah, it's incredible. I mean, I think we all have that we're successful in going through. Like, it's hard to explain the feeling of like seeing someone, and that's the guy you were chasing the day before, and you were like, oh man, I don't belong here because that guy's going to make it. And then the next day you see him quit, and like all of us just sort of look around at that point like, well, okay, all right, next evolution, like let's go. So as you look back, I know it's been a bit, right? But as you look back at Buds, because obviously as everyone, you went through the last hard class. As you look back, what's your favorite memory of either the hardest time or just a fun memory of going through Buds as you start seeing those folks ring the bell? What's your memory of that?
Yeah, and there's a second part to the inspiration discussion.
Yeah,
and that part was just seeing lots of different sizes and shapes of people, and so seeing some really small dudes that were just the fire in the gut that just kept them going, and seeing those guys and those, you build that sense of team and teammate early on. As you're assigned a swim buddy and part of a boat crew, and you become part of a team. And that really became the greater inspiration for me, less about seeing others not make it and more about seeing those who were making it.
Great point.
And just getting to know those incredible teammates and people. And of course, you got people from all over the place, right? Different cultures, different backgrounds, all coming together, and pretty cool experience to see others succeeding and doing it as a team.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember having a similar thought towards the end of our qualification course of like, man, if this is the quality of guys that are still in the school with me, I can't wait to see when I'm actually in a team room and the quality of people. It is inspiring. And then you become to the point, Dave, I'm sure you're the same way, is like you just start not wanting to let even your fellow students down, so that it's going to be the same way on a team. So incredible opportunity, as we say we sort of have an embarrassment of riches and an abundance of riches in human capital, and it's why we're so committed to taking care of each other, because we know that the humans are more important than hardware in our force. So as you come through, I got to ask finally though, as we sort of end on the school thing, everybody's got to ask, everybody asked me, what does it feel like to get a Green Beret? For you, what does it feel like to get that Trident? I know at that time it wasn't an immediate thing, right? It took a little while. So how did it feel to finally, after all of that time, be able to be fully qualified?
Yeah, it was pretty surreal. You even at Buds, you you look up to those instructors walking around, they're wearing their blue shirts, and they're all, these really fit specimens who can just seem to run and PT forever, and you hear stories about them, and they're just legends. And then you show up at your SEAL team there, and you're surrounded by, again, just living legends walking. And when I showed up at SEAL Team 1, we still had a few sort of Vietnam era folks walking around, again, just walking legends. And so to just walk day in and day out and learn from those types of professionals, it was surreal. And then to be able to pin on that Trident that I saw others wearing was certainly at that time felt like the biggest accomplishment in my entire life, up to that point. So pretty awesome.
When I was finishing up school, one of my instructors on the AC-130 was a Vietnam. He had come up over the Ho Chi Minh Trail. Yeah. And then we would go to this bar. It doesn't even exist anymore. It was called the Fireside. And a lot of those guys, because in Thailand and Utapao and Udorn had come back and now had families that were Thai. Yeah. So it was almost like being back in a hooch in Vietnam, era. And all these old legends were all there. And you just wanted to be around and absorb it. I imagine, Dave, as you kind of get to the team out there at SEAL Team 1, like you said, you have these guys, you just want to absorb as much information as you can, and it starts to shape who you are as a SEAL, huh?
Absolutely. And, the mantra as a new guy walking in, you're told right off the bat, you're not going to talk, you're just going to listen.
Yeah, sure.
And it's a good thing, quite frankly, because there's so much to learn from all those incredible professionals that you're surrounded by day in and day out. So, it was just a great honor, honestly, to be brought into that team and to be learning from such incredible people.
Yeah, I mean, we say it on almost every episode, right? Almost every single guest talks about that feeling of getting to that team and being with these people, but it's not something that we, even though we talk about it all the time, I mean, it is as true in every single person's story. And if you've had the opportunity as a listener to be a part of the special operations community, whether as a member, as an attachment, whatever, hopefully you felt that same, camaraderie as part of the team, because it is incredibly important to us. And so, Dave, as you start working your way up in leadership, can you talk to us about how you remember now your maturation as a leader as you start taking those next steps? You go from that new guy of like, just shut up and take the trash, sweep the floor, to like, now, okay, I've got a couple of years and I'm starting to step up and take some responsibility. How do you remember both either the formal or the informal sort of maturation you had coming up in the teams?
Yeah, or lack of maturation would probably be more appropriate. Certainly a lack of maturity there. But I would say, I was in a unique role and scenario where I was pinning on Chief E7, which is a key milestone for SEALs, where you become a team leader or a platoon chief, and you're actually sort of responsible for those under you. And so I was pinning that on at 9/11 timeframe. Yeah. And so quickly was thrown into the role of taking responsibility for a team. And it hits you harder when you suddenly realize that you're responsible for others' lives. It's different, right? So I would say there was certainly a lack of maturity and a lack of understanding of the importance of the role up until that point. And then as I'm pinning on Chief and then 9/11 and suddenly we're deployed, it really hits home that, hey, this is serious business. And as you start to lose teammates as we continued on for years there in the particularly in Afghanistan and Iraq, you start to realize the key role of leaders and caring for people and developing other leaders, because that's something that early on I didn't really have a full appreciation for. And I don't think, especially inside of NSW, we didn't have quite as formal of a pipeline of leadership development with some of the courses and skills and things that the Army, that I have a lot of appreciation for now, seeing what the Army has. We've developed it over time, having seen the importance of it. So shift in mindset, over time, seeing greater and greater emphasis and importance on, hey, how do I develop young leaders and prepare them to be fully prepared to take the helm and to be able to step into that role as a team leader at the toughest moment maybe in their career.
Yeah, and this becomes real important, right? As you're a chief and then a senior chief, that window coinciding with post 9/11, and like you said, the thing that'll mature you the most is losing a teammate, right? You start to realize how important all that family and leadership preparation is. Yeah. You know, when you're dealing with casualty assistance officers, KCOs or KOs, depending on which service you're in, and you're dealing with the hard business of what I would call rainy day leadership. You know, when you think leadership, you always think sunny day. People are gathered around. You do an inspiration.
Everything smiles. Yeah.
But where it hurts is where it matters, right? And I think, Dave, talk about the culture that developed amongst the SEALs as an organization, through heartache and development, if you will, of how that helped shape your leadership as well.
Yeah. We're a very small portion of the larger SOCOM enterprise, a very small community made up of very small teams, platoons, units of action that grow really close together. And so you build really tight relationships with those around you as you prepare, train, and deploy for combat. And so I think, one of the lessons I learned most was you've got to look to your left and your right. And those folks right around you, they're the ones that are, they're the ones that mean the most every day, because you're learning from them, you're learning with them, you're preparing for those hardest moments, and you don't fully appreciate it again until you lose one of those teammates and you come to realize, wow, this is real.
Yeah.
But yeah, so as you know, the SEAL community is very small, largely centered up in San Diego and Virginia Beach. And so I spent a lot of my time there in Virginia Beach after leaving SEAL Team 1. And that community, in particular, as we started to have greater numbers of casualties, that entire community just wrapped its arms around the SEAL community. And so you build these really close personal relationships with everyone in the community and neighbors and friends around you. And, I had kids at the time that were growing up with other SEAL kids and Gold Star kids. And as you look around and you see these really strong spouses and Gold Star spouses raising kids,
amazing.
Those really resilient kids, it's pretty incredible. It's pretty incredible.
Absolutely. I appreciated what you brought up as far as, formalized leadership. It brings me back to episode 2 with Vice Admiral Szymanski. Yeah. We had that conversation as well. So as a listener, if you're just popping into Softcast as one of your few, your new episodes, I invite you to go back, because there's a great conversation in episode 2, sort of expanding on what Dave was talking about there on formalized leadership training. And I want to take one more sort of question in around that 9/11 timeframe, right? Because you talked about that's a shift in everyone's career to kind of hit that first leadership position where you're a combat leader, you're in charge of folks. And then it's a huge shift in every single one of our careers as 9/11, right? I'm curious, as you took both of those shifts at sort of the same time, how prepared, you talked a little bit about how prepared you felt. How well prepared did you feel that your SEAL element was from the training you all had been doing prior to that? Did you feel like, okay, hey,
that's a great question.
We're running and we're ready to go, get after it and be the response force?
Yeah, I think you fall back on your training in those hard moments, and it showed itself day in and day out. What a really solid training pipeline as you think about the tactical and operational capabilities that the SEALs were delivering. It really showed itself day in and day out, because as I would watch, running a small team on the battlefield and seeing other teams maneuver and watching those elements operate, it strikes you as you do that day after day and night after night, and you see the really, really just professional combat leaders and folks stepping up and taking lead and making it happen on the battlefield. You come to realize that training that maybe you didn't appreciate it as much as you should have, but it ended up really, I mean, it saves lives and it drives how we operate every single day. So I think we were unsure if our training was what we hoped it would be, and as we first entered into the foray of Afghanistan, we were unsure. But after initial contact and after those first deployments, you quickly realize that you're doing things right. And but you don't rest on your laurels. Obviously, there's constant learning, lifelong learning, and so you get the AARs, the after action reports, you bring them back, and you change how you train and do things to evolve your training to better suit the specific place that you're deploying to. So it was a constant learning process. But yeah, the training was phenomenal.
I remember, and Dave, I'm going to pivot this back to you, giving you a moment to think about this unclassified wise, but I remember this is in Iraq, but I remember driving back and coming through, and all of a sudden, like, some of the dirt around us started kicking up, right? And then I started hearing like a crack, and oh my gosh, they're shooting at us, right? I mean, there's almost this surreal moment of contact, right? That in your brain you have to process. Do you remember, unclassified wise, or any story of those early days in Iraq or in Afghanistan where you realize, hey, we're actually in contact right now, and like because everything had been training to that point.
No, I remember.
Now everything is real. I mean, anything you want to share on any of those?
Yeah, I wish that I was in a vehicle or on the ground where I could have some control over it and maybe fire back. But unfortunately, my first time hearing that we were taking fire, I was sitting inside of a helicopter where I couldn't really do much other than just sit there and wait to land. It was surreal having been in the teams for quite some time and having primarily a training mindset, and now suddenly in combat, and your first time in contact, it's almost surreal. You're like, wow, is this really happening? Are we really getting shot at? And then you ask yourself, well, am I really sitting in a helicopter where I can't even do anything?
Is this how I'm going out?
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. I've had those same experiences, and it's a helpless feeling.
That's like me in a vehicle. What am I doing here? I'm supposed to be up in the air. Right? It's easier up there.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm curious, as you talked about, sort of taking those, as you said, we had our training prior to 9/11. We start, hey, we realize our training base is good, but we're obviously going to continue to adapt. I'm curious, because you were later in one of the groups that's responsible for developing some of the techniques and tactics and procedures for NSW. How did you feel as far as the maturation of that, of learning from each one of those rotations and then getting better and getting those training cycles so that every SEAL that hits the ground in that next rotation has got the latest and greatest to go and take the fight to the enemy?
Yeah. It's one of the things that I love about SOF, just the creativity, the agility, the innovative mindset. And so even day in and day out, you can see teammates tweaking gear, making adjustments, guys who know how to sew, sewing creating new pouches, new designs. And this is early on before, the Black Hawk days and all of the companies now that make some phenomenal gear. A lot of those companies were started by teammates of ours who saw the potential. But you're learning day in and day out on the battlefield, and you're seeing modifications, making changes, working with your Air Force, Army, aviation partners, tweaking how you do things on and off of helos, how to get faster, how to get better, how to be the best fighting force on the battlefield, and then taking all that back, feeding it back, and especially as you think about technology development, things like our night vision capabilities and others. Just incredible, the innovative mindset of everybody around you. And then, and now understanding it a little bit better on the backside of SOCOM's ability to rapidly procure and make things happen in such a unique way. It's an awesome organization that I'm proud to be a part of.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, as you get up, you're coming through that senior chief and you get into this command master chief and you start moving up into some of these more strategic roles, right? Because I want to get to INDOPACOM and I don't want, I want to talk to you about everything, but I also want to get to INDOPACOM because I am really interested in it because it's not my area of responsibility. And so I'm interested because we have you as the SOCPAC SEL. But prior to that, you didn't just go straight to SOCPAC, right? We've got some strategic leadership positions that you were able to go take as a CMC or a command master chief. Can you talk to me just about your maturation now from going from that team level of going through all of these rotations and slowly moving up, for the Army, from the company to the battalion, for you all, from moving from the team to the group and all of these things? How did you feel as you started to move into these more strategic CMC positions, and how did you use your leadership, lessons learned from your time on the teams?
Yeah, so early on, I didn't have an appreciation for the importance, the significance of all those other enablers and capabilities outside of a SEAL platoon, outside of a SEAL team. And so, my first exposure to that, it was eye-opening. I suddenly saw really, really talented folks, not wearing a Trident, but just doing amazing work day in and day out. Technical specialists, those who had skills far beyond anything I could ever hope to attain in the technical fields, and the things that they could do to help find and fix targets, their ability to do unique things like flying UAVs, repairing UAVs or underwater vehicles, the signals capabilities,
it's incredible.
All of those technical specialists, just really incredible. And I ended up as the CMC at SRT2, Special Reconnaissance Team 2, where it was largely made up of those enabling capabilities that we provided and deployed with the SEAL teams. And so a small portion of that being SEALs, and a much larger portion of it being those special enabling rates that we would get from the larger Navy, and then inject them with some soft, goodness and prep them to deploy. So I think my lesson learned from all of that was, hey, look around you and really, take the time to see the incredible talent of those that are outside of us that go through some type of a soft selection, Q course or BUDS. Like really, really talented, amazing individuals. And I've learned a lot from all of them and continue to learn to this day.
It's funny that I'm glad you brought up sort of your maturation on that, because I remember being a young dude and having like group CSMs that were like, all this guy talks about is the enablers, and it was because he was having that same awakening because he had been in those other positions, and now suddenly his eyes had been opened to all the breadth of this specialty.
Absolutely.
And all of his all calls, were about like, hey, same kind of thing, like, hey guys, you need to realize all of the other professionals that are enabling you to do it. And for us as a 25-year-old E6 or whatever, you're like, why is this guy always talking about enablers? But that's why.
That's part of the maturation.
He sees more than I do, right?
Yep, that's the maturation process. And like Dave just brought up, nobody has the appreciation for it till you're responsible, right? And you realize how little you know of the depth of what they bring, which I think is kind of leading us down this theme into that. Okay, so you move off. And I remember this well, right, as we talked about it a couple years ago, is you start to compete for a theater special operations command. So now not only are you responsible and in charge of SEALs, you now have your first foray into, no kidding, senior enlisted leader of a joint force, right? So what was that experience like there at SOCNORTH, our special operations command for North America?
Yeah, I feel extremely, fortunate and lucky to have been as part of the JSOC enterprise and had, a lot of experience and time working around the joint force. Yep. Even did, a tour down at JSOC. So I feel like I was prepared, maybe a little more than others to be in that joint space, which was good. Didn't fully appreciate a TSOC and what it did until I was in the middle of one. Thankfully, it was a smaller one, so it was a great place to kind of cut your teeth on, improving your understanding of the joint force, understanding the roles of a TSOC, and, a very unique and challenging one at that, with SOCNORTH, Special Operations Command North, being responsible for SOF in and around the homeland. Think, Canada, the Arctic, Mexico, Bahamas, the maritime approaches to the homeland. And now how does SOF fit into this unique puzzle where largely the continental United States is, the responsibility for that falls on interagency, law enforcement, et cetera. How does SOF provide some piece in that puzzle? So it was a great learning experience and a great place to sort of cut my teeth on and prepare me for this much larger TSOC out here in the Indo-Pacific.
Yeah, much larger and much larger area of responsibility with, at the time you take it now, a lot of complexity in INDOPACOM. So for the listeners, Indo as in India, if you're thinking India, basically all the way over to the shores of the Pacific Ocean, we've got all these island chains, we've got China, we've got Japan, we've got all of these different, we used to laugh, areas of responsibility get cut up for us on special forces groups, each group's got a different AOR. We used to always mess with our first group guys because, for 7th group, right, we had Central and South America. We got like 3 languages if you count Haitian Creole in our crew, right? And we're looking at our brothers and over there in first group with untold numbers of dialects and languages, and just the intricacy of now from stepping, as you said, from SOCNORTH to SOCPAC. Can you tell us about how your sort of eyes were open to that and your process of coming over there?
Yeah, so very fortunate for me. I started my Navy career on the West Coast and at SEAL Team 1. So I had 4 deployments into the AOR, so I kind of understood the Pacific. Granted, it was a number of years ago. What I didn't have an appreciation for was just how vast and large this AOR is and how far away Hawaii is from everything. Speaking to the vastness of the AOR, one of my favorite general officers, General Fenton, likes to say, penguins to polar bears and Hollywood to Bollywood. That's how big this place is.
I love it.
Yeah, over 50% of the world's surface area and population, over 3,000 different languages, 2 of the 3 largest economies. The list of the things that exist here is just tremendous. And I didn't have a full appreciation for it until my boss, General Rudd, and I started traveling out and linking up with SOF partners in all of our partner nations. There's 36 countries here. So there's just a vast AOR, and it's a lot of water and a lot of flying to get to anywhere to work with those partners. But, having a history at SEAL Team 1 and having, come over and worked during JSETs with Philippine SEALs, Thailand, traveled across, from Australia up to Singapore, Malaysia, et cetera. And then now fast forward to reconnecting with many of those units was an incredible experience. In my BUDS class, we had some Singaporeans, right? So cool to visit Singapore and see on the wall of their senior enlisted leaders pictures, seeing guys wearing the Trident. So it's an incredibly big, complex AOR, and I just didn't have any idea what I was getting myself into. So I thanks Greg for setting me up like this. Really,
there's been, so in this job, one of the great things I do is I get spend a lot of time in long relationships with Dave and all his counterparts, but it's also talking to all the general officers and then who talent-wise and personality-wise matches up with that general or flag officer and lots of deep conversations. And when General Rudd was talking, and it was actually before General Rudd, right? But when we were having these conversations about who would be a good battle buddy for him, right? And General Rudd's like, well, here's what I'm looking for. And I said, sir, I got one for you. Yeah. Right? And he's a little slow, we don't really know what he does, but Isom might work out for you, right? So, and he's like, you tell me Dave Isom's available? And General Rudd obviously knew Dave and they have a long history. And I said, I think we can make Dave Isom available for you. And that set into motion what becomes to me, and Dave, I want you to talk about this a little bit. How important is that relationship, with your boss? when you're looking at really hard problems. We've got a national defense strategy that's talking about China as our pacing threat, our challenge, if you will, and you've got China as one of your primary countries. And so how important is it that you and your boss are synced, and then how much time did you spend with them as you started this tour?
Yeah, great question, and it goes to the uniqueness of the commander and CSEL relationship.
Yeah,
a tremendous amount of trust that our commanders place in us, and so early on, General Rudd and I knew each other from the past, and we had bounced around some similar places, and so had some connection there, and similar mindset. But right off the bat, we had a connection. We knew that it was going to be a great relationship, and again, not being a quitter, I knew that I would do everything to make it work, because that was the task at hand. So even if it had not been a great relationship, I was determined that it would work. But he's a phenomenal leader, really, really incredibly bright, brilliant thinker, and so as we quickly, COVID had slowed travel a lot in this theater. And so as COVID began to wane and we began to see countries open up, allowing us the opportunity to travel more.
Yeah.
So we got on the road and started hitting a lot of these strategic partners, visiting our task forces and others out forward, and seeing how they're operating, touching folks that we work with. The more time I spent with him, I just admired him more. Really had a great appreciation for his understanding of the challenge here. I mean, he is definitely the right leader at the right time in the right place for a very complex problem. As you think about, the problem of competition that could turn into conflict.
Yeah, if you're not careful, right? It's about controlling levers and opportunities and de-escalating where necessary, in areas of tension. But how much time, look, he was a year in the job when you came in. So, man, you're playing catch up real quick, right? So how stressful was that for you? And then how long did it take you to kind of get caught up? Because he says you're way in front of him now, right? So he's like, I'm trying to keep up with Isom, right? So.
Well, I think he's pulling your leg there a little bit, but I will tell you, I did have the advantage of having been in the AOR previously, so that certainly helped. It was not an unfamiliar location. Master Chief Tim Beamer before me did an incredible turnover. He's a super talented, bright leader that you have there at SOCOM inside of one of the directorates. So awesome turnover and preparation from him helped make it happen. And then, General Rudd and I spent a lot of time right off the bat just reacquainting, getting to know each other, getting on the road and traveling. And of course, because Hawaii is not close to anything, you have, at least 5 to 6 to 8 hours to get to the nearest other chunk of land. So you spend a lot of time on airplanes together and sitting in airports together. And I did a lot of reading. Obviously, a lot of reading, both books, websites, the mission, vision statements here and at INDOPACOM. And for me, having come from a TSOC, I didn't feel too threatened by the TSOC aspects of this, but it was the larger picture of, hey, what is our 4-star boss out here? What is he thinking? What is he concerned about? And then what do we need to think about as we try to fulfill our role as a TSOC in this complex theater? So I spent a lot of time trying to study the INDOPACOM mission and vision and understand, what Admiral Aquilino would ask us to do.
Yeah, I think as we talk about the complexity of the AOR, we're lucky to have some long-term and stalwart allies across the world, but within the INDOPACOM AOR, we've got some phenomenal allies, long-term relationships there. But not every other AOR has also a pacing threat within it, right? And not every other AOR has U.S. troops stationed in the AOR, in other countries like we have in Okinawa, and so. I'm just curious, as you've now started to be able to go back and do some of this travel, how is your sort of lens? What are you messaging to the partners? What are you messaging to your own folks about, sort of the current situation and how we're approaching it?
Yeah. So number one message is sort of the goal, the vision, the mission for U.S. INDOPACOM, which is ensuring a free and open Indo-Pacific. Shared values because of that long history that you speak of, us reinforcing the importance of the United States of America and our role as a partner here and remaining a key partner, and that we're here with them. We're not going to leave. We're by their side, and we're in this as teammates with every single one of those key partners. And so we've got heavy investment. We've got folks in day in and day out at least a dozen countries, and multiple folks moving place to place and making those connections. And every time we visit, we see, I'm inspired by those partners. They're in a tough scenario, a tough spot here in a somewhat tough neighborhood. And so just, our day in and day out, part of our role is just reinforcing that partnership and reinforcing those relationships to ensure we remain the partner of choice, and that we reassure allies and partners and they know that we're here for them and with them.
It's presented a lot of new opportunities as well, right? So, in countries like India and really throughout Southeast Asia now, right, as we kind of the Southeast to South Asia to Southwest Asia, we're seeing, countries that we have common goals and ideals, like Japan, like Australia, that we continue to work with often, and then really starting to understand and really share ideas and goals with India. Dave, I know that we had an opportunity to visit there, and what was your big takeaway? What's the biggest thing I think you learned about India? That for us, we know it, right? But really learning about our Indian partners. Anything you want to share on that one?
Yeah, a little bit like all the other countries here. I mean, just such unique cultures and backgrounds. And I think the thing I see with every single country that we visit is the commonality, especially down at the SOF operator level, down at the teammate level. You just have good people who want to serve their country and do the best they can for their family, and you see a commonality that is I think ties us and binds us together with those key partners. So I've seen it in every country that we visited. From Mongolia to Indonesia to Singapore to India, across the spectrum, there's just a tremendous amount of loyalty, a sense of duty and responsibility, and to see other partners and teammates who think very much the way we do about things is unique, because you have such a different picture and a different understanding that you may grow up with about a country, and to see them being very similar to you and me is pretty cool.
Yeah,
that's cool. I'm glad you brought that up, because I was going to kind of ask a question along those lines of, you had previous experience in the AOR, you had previous experience as a TSOC. Was there anything that sort of surprised you, or what do you think so far has been a big surprise to you, to sort of dovetail off of that last answer?
Yeah, I guess my biggest surprise has been a lack of understanding on my part, just not understanding some of the importance of some of these smaller nations, the economic impacts. You think about trillion-dollar economies in a place like Indonesia. You think about the amount of trade and commerce in and out of the first and second island chains. You think about our connectivity to many of these small nations, and the role that they play touching our economy is pretty significant. And then our role in that, again, is as we are often one of the few partners that are consistently in some of those nations, and providing that constant touch in a place like the Philippines, where there have been some political differences, some challenges with the Visiting Forces Agreement. When we visited our embassy there, they spoke directly about the importance of the SOF role in assisting the Philippines in their counterterrorism problem, and how significant of a role that had in reestablishing the visiting forces agreement and getting past some of those political differences. So, yeah, surprised by the incredible importance of each of these small nations. There's a lot of small nations here, and so all of them important to our economy and important to in our defense partnerships as well.
Talking with 1st Special Forces Group, we're out there. I was in India last year, and then around the Pacific, and then again out to see our great leaders out at First Group. And Dave, I want you to talk about this, and this is the great challenge is there are, like you said, there are so many small nations and island nations across Micronesia and Polynesia and Madagascar and Sri Lanka and all the way through South, East, and West Asia that you can't, they all want increased, especially with SOF, they want increased presence. We don't have the capacity. So from a frustration level from your end, and I don't mean to mischaracterize that, but it's frustrating because we want to do more and it's simply a capacity. Can you talk about how much more you could do or gosh, it would be just if we just had one more, right?
Yeah, you should be getting my email request here shortly.
I knew it was coming, right? So
he's typing it on the side as
Let me start typing that up right now. No, we could take the entirety of the SOCOM enterprise and sprinkle it across this AOR, and we still would probably miss some of the key partners that we need to be touching day in and day out.
That are asking for it, by the way, right? That are all asking for increased contact. So that's
they are. Yeah, it is frustrating, and we obviously. So what we try to do is, if we can't be there persistently, then we're at least there episodically. We're helping facilitate JSETs. We're trying to make sure that we've got folks in and out. Maybe it's a SME or a subject matter exchange. Maybe it's just the boss and I going and touching, key leaders in a small nation. But you're right; they all want it. I think they all feel somewhat threatened by the peer competitor here in this AOR, and they all, of course, are looking for U.S. support and assistance. And so tremendously frustrating, but at the same time, really rewarding each time that we touch those partners or we see the great work. You see the sit reps, you see the amazing work that folks like our First Group folks out there doing just incredible work day in and day out. So that's pretty rewarding to see that. But I'd love to have more, and you'll get my request here shortly.
The 353rd, Special Operations Wing out there, and First Group Forward. 20 years really focused primarily on CENTCOM and to a slightly lesser extent AFRICOM. Those things are not going away right now. Our sustainable investment in that is going to look a little different. Right, it is. It's just the nature of the beast. So as we look at SOCOM, right, through our Theater Special Operations Command, and we look at this rebalancing of priorities, places like South America, Central and South America, places like the Indo-Pacific, that we have assumed risk in terms of our presence because of the last 20 years of concerted main effort, primarily in CENTCOM. Dave and General Rudd are really working through, as are our other TSOCs, how to reintroduce and at what capacity can we do that?
Yeah, right. And to throw out a quick, just remembrance to some of the people that may be listening that may not even realize there was a contingent of the global war on terrorism that happened as active conflict in the INDOPACOM and GWAT-P in the Philippines. So it is not like it's just been hunky dory while we're doing all these other things. There's continuous. I think we've hammered home the complexity of the AOR, but it's as a guy who doesn't have experience in that AOR, to me looking at it, it's there's conflict everywhere, but there's been significant investment from us in some of those places to, as you said earlier, to quell or to alleviate tensions at times. but it hasn't been, just rampant peace throughout that during the 20 years that we're over there. So, you're coming back in, as you said, sort of stepping back in, but we've had continuous engagement as well.
A key part of, we have this thing, and Dave, I want to kick this over to you. Yeah. The key part of this conflict continuum that you hear now, instead of combat, this conflict continuum, on the far left is cooperation.
Right.
And Dave, how important has cooperation been in terms with our allies and our partners out there, and then what's in terms of SOCPAC's approach? So it's not all about combat and conflict; it's about avoiding that through cooperation. How important is that to your strategy?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's a great point. So we can't do it all, and so we rely heavily on key partners in the region, and in particular, we could highlight Australia, a great partner in the region with a tremendous history and tremendous culture and connectivity. Them and New Zealand across the Pacific Islands, and so we're seeing them really take a greater role here in the theater. And you talked about it, deterrence, right? I mean, the strategy is integrated deterrence, and to prevent conflict, which we don't want. So that cooperation with our Five Eye partners and others is absolutely critical here. We can't be everywhere all the time. We rely heavily on them. We're integrated with them here inside of our headquarters and out in the theater. And we have a great relationship with them, in particular, again, the Five Eye partners, in particular Australia and New Zealand, who have such a rich history here. And we're, I think, increasing reliance on those partners as they tend to focus more like us now in this region, as they've shifted away a little bit from CENTCOM. So they're growing their interest and their capabilities here. And I see that just continuing to grow.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And, we were lucky to have, as one of our guests, we were lucky to have an ally from New Zealand to discuss some of those things. So it's cool to have that other lens. We recently just did one with a Checks-Off operator, sort of get a European lens on partnership and allies. And he echoed a lot of what you just said, Dave. It's mutually supportive, and it is that cooperation is incredibly important, as you said, Chief. As we're drifting towards sort of the end of our time here, I want to pull it back, because I'm the POTUF guy. I want to pull it back to a little bit of human stuff before we let you go. I know you've been incredibly, I know human performance has been foundational to you personally. You share a lot of stuff on that, and I know that taking care of our people is important to all of us. Yeah. So can you talk about your lens now and looking at all your time across, a very storied career? How important has taking care of yourself and taking care of your people been to you?
Yeah. I think like many, I'll use the term seasoned, not old. Like many of us seasoned leaders, we probably didn't have an appreciation for the impact on our bodies and minds that this job was having, right? And it took some time for us at SOCOM to come to terms with that and to stand up the POTUF program, which is phenomenal. I certainly wasn't focused on it. I didn't think about the impact of all those hours and hours in a boat getting, pounded out on the ocean there, the damage to the spine. I didn't think about, multiple parachute openings constantly. Those impacts, you ignore them early on, and they catch up to you later in life for sure. So as I think back, I guess reflecting back, I wish I had thought about it more, wish I had focused a little bit more on self-care. But now fast forward to where I am now. I mean, I visit our POTUF folks every day. The physical therapist is amazing. Love the whole program. And I stress it with young leaders. And sometimes you have to help folks take a knee. You have to, get them to step off the treadmill just for a moment and to do a little bit of self-care. Yep. Because if you don't, then you're no good to others at some point, Yeah. So my constant drumbeat is take care of yourself so you can take care of others.
No, that's a great point. And that's what, that's why I asked the question, because I know you've been passionate about it, as we all are as leaders, of trying to, reach back down in the force and hopefully create a better condition than what you came through as, so that as you see new things as you come to be a leader and you start to feel some of those boat rides, you want to reach back and leave it better than you found it. I want to just ask, as you look across your career, we've talked about a lot of different things. If you had to give us one thing that, as you look back, you're the proudest of so far, what would you say?
Ooh.
It's tough to nail it down to one thing, but I would say, looking back to the Jessica Lynch rescue, that was a pretty incredible moment in our nation's history, and for us, trained in hostage rescue, a big part of our mission set, and to go in behind enemy lines at the time and to be able to liberate an American service member, and to get her back to her teammates and back to her family, the impact was pretty incredible. And there was a strategic aspect to that as well, not just for her as a person, but for us as a nation. It showed it sort of demonstrated our commitment to leave no one behind, and to show that the United States would go anywhere, anytime, and do anything for our service members was sort of a broader message there. And at that moment in time in Iraq, we were getting a little bogged down in the Nasiriyah area. They were having some challenges continuing to move the battlefront forward, and so it created some strategic initiative and turned the tide a little bit that helped push some other efforts, across the battlefield. So really a strategic moment, and just, from on a personal perspective, thinking about the fact that we helped return someone back to their family was pretty awesome. Yeah. And again, going back to the jointness of the whole thing, we had every service represented there, and just what an incredible showing of our incredible team across DoD.
And one of the types of missions that it takes the most training to have the smallest, actual time on target. And to your point, to have one of our most high-profile hostages that we've had, especially during the global war on terrorism, there was some significant strategic value, as you said, not just to her as a person, but to the U.S. And so phenomenal, opportunity. And I'm glad that you brought it up. As we close up our time here, I want to turn it over to you for sort of your final thoughts. Is there anything that we haven't covered, or anything that you'd like to leave our listeners with, whether it's from your career or from your current position there at SOCPAC?
Yeah, I mean, first, I really appreciate the opportunity to chat with you gents this morning. It's awesome. Again, I would have come in at any time of the night to do this, so appreciate the opportunity. I think it's our task as senior enlisted leaders is to develop future leaders. That's one of the main things that I focus on day in and day out, is developing young leaders. Matt, you and I have talked about some of the things I post on social media, thinking about young leaders and how we better develop others. And again, that comes from a lifetime of learning and looking back at all the mistakes I made, all the things I got wrong, and any little thing I can do to help others get it right by looking at the mistakes I made and feeding them those lessons is important. So I would encourage leaders of all ages and at all positions across SOF and across DoD, think about that every day. Think about how you're touching others, how you're impacting their lives, and what are the little things you can do to assist them to become better leaders in the future. And if we all do that, then again, it makes our entire force better. And as we've seen reported in the news lately, the importance of the NCO Corps in places like Ukraine, we're seeing, I think the dividends that a little bit of investment pays. So think about how you touch people, how you develop future leaders, and how I aspire to be maybe one day as good as gentlemen like Chief Smith there.
Don't you even start, right? So Dave and I have long history, right? So back and forth. But hey, Dave, obviously on behalf of General Clark and everybody here at SOCOM, thanks for getting up this early in the morning. For me personally, thanks for being such a good teammate, brother, and friend. Again, good long history together, and I know that the force is in good hands with you at the helm. So it's always been an easy decision to advocate for your continued roles and leadership positions, because it's pretty easy to spot talent in the goods, and you exude that in everything you do. So from all of us here at SOCOM, thank you to you, and to our listeners, thank you very much for listening to us. Feel free to find us on various forms of social media and everywhere out there in the ether there, Matthew.
Yeah, absolutely. We appreciate it. Yeah, CMC, just phenomenal and honored to talk to you. Thanks for walking us through your career. There's so much more of it that I want to get on, but I know that we try to keep these under an hour. So, but we're just phenomenally honored that you join us and walk our listeners through. And listeners, thank you all for the support that you give us. We continue to get an outpouring of ideas from you all, and it does shape some of the things and the people that we bring on. So if you have an idea, if there's something that you'd like to hear, please send us an email, softcast@socom.mil. Check us out on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, and please go down right now and give us a 5-star review and rate the show so that other folks can find it. And with that, on behalf of all of us here at SOCOM, thanks for listening to Softcast.